You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello and welcome to Garibaldi Red, the Nottingham Forest podcast from Nottinghamshire Live. My name is Matt Davis, hosting as ever, and we're joined today by Reds legend Garry Birtles returning to the show and Forza Garibaldi co-founder Greg Mitchell to talk about, well, yet another defeat, but maybe some positivity and maybe some, I don't know. I mean, that's one of the topics we'll come across. But good afternoon or good morning, gents. Are you both well?
Excellent, thank you.
Good. Thanks for joining us again. Both of you are friends of the show, so thanks for coming on. I mean, Garry, I'm sure Greg won't mind giving Garry first dibs as a club legend. I mean, what did you make of last night's game?
We're just a hard watch at the moment. It's just so difficult. I said the last time I watched it, I kept switching over to Mrs. Brown's Boys Christmas specials. You know, it was that difficult to watch. I just needed cheering up a little bit. And Norwich was always going to be difficult. This run of games was always going to be difficult. But there just doesn't seem very much improvement at the moment. And I don't put this down to Chris at all. I think maybe the players are getting found out a little bit. Maybe they thought they were a bit better than they are. And you've got to get out this malaise at the moment, because the longer it carries on, the deeper you go, the confidence dips even more. You've just got to get out of it as quickly as possible. And, you know, it was a close game. Their winner was, a lucky deflection again. And those sort of things seem to be going against us at the moment. All the things seems to be going against us at the moment. But we have to turn that round. We have to get positive, and the only way you're going to do that is by start winning football matches, or even get a draw. You know, a draw would be, as good as anything at the moment. And we're just fortunate that the teams around us down at the bottom are losing games as well and not getting away from us. But you look above us and there's a little bit of a gap appearing. You know, you look to Millwall, I think, is it 6 or 7 points? And that's a concern. You don't want to be going into the new year playing massive catch-up, because we've seen it before, how we've struggled, and it's not comfortable for any fan to watch that.
There was an interesting divide after the game, Greg, on Twitter. There was the one camp very much, we're absolutely doomed, we're going down. That was utter garbage again. And then there was the more kind of a bit more positive, but still obviously very worried. I mean, which camp were you in after the game?
Oh, it's worrying, because I was proud of that second half performance. I thought it was as good as we've played under Chris Hughton. But it's always a worry when you walk away proud of the way we lost, and you've got to start looking at where the next points are coming from. And it's incredible that we're in this position, because, after Sabri went, I thought that was the solution, and we've just not improved and we're not creating the chances. So I'm in the camp of still got some positivity, because you don't keep playing as well as we did in the second half and keep losing. But then again, there's the infamous lines of too good to go down and things like that. We've got to start improving quick, or getting results off the performances.
The thing is, as well, I'm not a stats person, as you probably well know, but the stats are a bit damning in the shots department. Shots on target. You look at over the past 5 games, and there's hardly anything in that column, and that's a real concern. The creativity's not there. Carvalho got a lot of stick. I gave him a little bit of stick, but I thought he got a rum deal a little bit, because he never got 7 or 8 games in the team, so he could have an influence on what was going on. And then Silva comes in, he's disappeared. Where's that creativity? And I just that final third is so important, and we just don't. Joe Lolly seems to have dipped off a little bit. People may be getting used to the way he plays. He likes cutting in. They know his strengths, and oppositions go through an opposition, with a fine tooth comb. Pick the weaknesses, look at the strengths, and they work on it, and you can see that happening. And I feel sorry for Taylor up front, because he runs his legs off. He absolutely puts everything he possibly can into every game he plays, and he gets no service. And I just hope when Graben's fit that Chris might say, right, let's go to up front. Let's change it, because we are predictable at the moment. The way we play coming out, Norwich. I watched a lot of them when they were in the Premier League, commentated on them, and they never had a plan B. They always played the same way. They always played one up front, and that's why they went down for me, because, when they were losing games, they never went to a different plan. And I think we're a little bit like that at the moment. Chris is getting to to learn about everybody. He's got a lot of learning to do because the squad is so big, and we can't get rid of anybody. Agents will just be saying, right, stay here, you're on good money, and we know they are. And, it's a difficult one for Chris because I'm sure he'd want to get rid of quite a few of that squad and in January have his own say and bring people in who are going to make a difference. And that is the key for me. Try and win a couple of games, try and catch up a little bit in the league, get into January in a safer position, and hopefully then Chris will be given the wherewithal to go out and pick whoever he wants to pick and bring them in, because that, I think, with the Forest fans has been the big annoyance. The recruitment, it's not been particularly good. We needed strikers. Lewis Grabban scored the goals last season. I always said if he'd have got injured last season, we wouldn't have been anywhere near the playoffs because nobody else apart from Joe Lolly was chipping in. So, things have got to change. I think everybody knows that creativity has got to come to the club, and hopefully Chris will get the wherewithal to go and do that.
How many goals would you get in this team, Garry, when you were playing?
I've no idea. If you haven't got a John Robertson or a Martin O'Neill, wide, I was lucky. Yeah. Crikey, how lucky was I to have those two guys? But we had creativity all the way through. We had Archie Gemmill in the team, Ian Bowyer, who scored goals for fun from midfield. That's what we haven't got at the moment. We haven't got a midfield player who is chipping in with goals. We haven't got a centre half who's coming up and scoring, 4 or 5 goals. We've got nobody scoring goals at all at the moment. So when you've got none of those, that's when you're in massive trouble. And that's the conundrum Chris has got to try and solve, but it's not easy.
What did you make of the first half, Greg? Because I was moderately encouraged. I thought some of the passing was absolutely horrific and the pedestrian play through midfield, but they were decent enough, and then they go and shoot themselves in the foot yet again, don't they?
It's the Forest of last year conceding in the 48th minute. Games never go 48 minutes in the blooming first half. We're cursed. I swear we're cursed this year. But the first half, I didn't enjoy it that much. I was frustrated, but towards the end of it, we did look a lot better. Gave us hope going into the second half, which we were kind of proven right because we did play a lot better. But going back to Gary's point about things like the midfield and having that people feeding them, we've got the opportunity to have 5 subs this year. If we'd have had Silva, Cash, Carvalho's on that bench, we're missing that creativity so much. And those options that last year only having 3 subs and having the 5 this year, it's just a crying shame with our massive squad. There's just not anywhere on that bench where you think they're going to change the game for us.
I can see you nodding along there, Garry. You agree with that, do you?
Absolutely. You always look at a bench and you think, well, how strong is the bench? That's one of the things I always look at first when the team sheets are announced. When I'm commentating, how strong is the bench? If need be, who can come off and make a difference? And I don't think we have that at the moment. When Amiobi's on the bench, he can come on. He creates a little bit of a spark. But at the moment, I think he's that solitary figure who's trying to do that. And, he's trying maybe too hard and, he loses out sometimes when you think, well, he could pass it. He's trying maybe one thing too many, but I ain't got a problem with that because at least he's trying. He's trying to make a difference. He's trying to create something. And he's the only one at the moment. You think when he's on the ball, something might just happen. And you need 4 or 5 of those. But there's not at the moment. And everybody I hear saying at the moment when, Colback and Yates are in the same side, it's a very negative look to the game. And I think the problem we've got, because we play the way we do so deep, that when when we do break, Taylor's by himself and there's no support for him, and then everything breaks down because of that. They get back, the opposition get back. They've only got 1 to mark, so that's not a problem. And then, that we just hit a brick wall and then we're under pressure again. And I just think teams, have worked us out a little bit. And, it's just a very difficult thing to get out of when you're down at the bottom of the league.
Do you think the last couple of games have highlighted just how kind of Forest are quite pedestrian, aren't they? Norwich and Reading pass the ball so well. And David Prutton on Monday talks about a lack of pace in the Forest team. I kind of feel like the last 2 games have just really highlighted that. What do you reckon, Greg, about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're relying on one striker up front who, he looks fed up. He looked fed up when he came off the last game, and I don't know whether he got injured yesterday, but at least he acknowledged the manager when he came off, which was a bit better. But we're relying on young Swan coming through and suddenly being this striker or whoever's going to help. And Guerrero, who, he didn't cut it at Olympiacos, so I'm not sure how well he's going to do here. It is a worry. The more you talk about it and the more you think about things, the more worried you get about where we're going this season, to be honest.
Garry, you can talk more about strikers from a qualified position. I assume that Taylor came off after 60 minutes because he's played so many minutes, but do you think that's right, or do you think that Houghton was looking at it tactically and made a rather curious change?
I'm always curious when the striker comes off. He's playing a thankless role at the moment, and he's doing it well for me. He never shirks out of anything. You see him close down. You see him sliding into things to try and get blocks. But you can only go so far with what he does up front, because he needs help and he's not getting that service. Strikers thrive on service. And if they don't get it, they get picked out because they're not scoring. Their influence in the game isn't as sufficient as it should be. And it's easy to pick on a striker because they're the ones who get paid the most money. They do the hardest job in the business. They score the goals. And when it's not happening, you're losing games, you're not scoring goals. The first one you look at is the striker, which would be unfair for me because, as I say, I played up front by myself. I played up front in the European Cup final against Hamburg. And I'll tell you what, it's not easy. And, I played in a fantastic team with fantastic players. But, we were under pressure in that particular game. And it was the job I had to do. And I knew that. And, you just get on with it. But on a weekly basis, it must be devastating continually not to get the opportunity or a half chance. And when the half chance does come, the goalkeeper saves it. That was it the last game when he was close in the ball to the far post. And, people say he should have scored. The keeper made a decent save. But when you only get one of those chances per game, that's when it becomes difficult for a striker. You're expected when it comes your way to put it away. And when, you're not getting that number of chances, it becomes more difficult when it does appear, when it comes your way. I know that when I was at Man United, when I wasn't scoring, you tense up, you're a little bit, hesitant because you don't want to miss. And, I know exactly what he's going through. And I think you've got to persevere with him. I'm fed up of all this, all this talk about number of games. You've got Jurgen Klopp banging on about, too many games, this, that, and the other. I counted the games over 2 seasons. I've mentioned it before, 136 games I played from the start, where, the friendly games when there was no such thing as a friendly under Clough. We talked about this before. But, it's December. It's not April, it's not May, it's December. It's a privileged position you're in playing professional football. Get on with it and enjoy every minute. Don't tell players they're tired because then they'll feel tired. It's a great, anybody would love to play. Ask people who have to go and work in the NHS how difficult that is. They're playing football, for goodness sake. Stop whinging about tiredness. Give them a day off training. Don't go on the training pitch. Clough used to do that with us. He used to come in and give you a couple of days off. And I'll tell you what, that didn't half lift your spirits. When you come in, all right, I'll see you. You're on Tuesday, right? I'll see you Friday. It lifts you. And then you come back in refreshed. Can't wait to get back on the training pitch. Can't wait to play a game. For goodness sake, these managers, stop whinging. Just get on with it. Players now, the privileged are on big money. Get out and play the game and enjoy every minute you can on that football pitch because it's a short career. And not everybody gets that opportunity. And, I feel for, Taylor when he gets dragged off. He didn't look happy. I'm delighted he didn't look happy. I wouldn't want him coming off and, with a smile on his face. So, yeah, it's we've got to change something round, I think, on the pitch. And if Graben gets fit, I'd love to see Graben and Taylor play up front together because I think that would work for Graben because his work rate will be done by Taylor. It'd be perfect for him. He could feed off Taylor because Taylor had it. He'll flick things on. He'll cause defenders to make mistakes. And then Lewis, we know what he can do in those final 18 yards. He's, if it comes his way, generally, he'll hit the target, and he'll get the goals. So it'll be interesting to see when he is fit whether Chris goes with the two up front.
It's two up front, and not the thing you'd like to see now, Greg. We've got to do something different, haven't they? Like Garry said,
it has to be. Like if it was a like for like substitution yesterday because of tiredness, that doesn't solve the way the game's going, does it? That wasn't anything different. That was just changing a player for, arguably not a better player. So I worry about the Grabban situation because it has been quite quiet. And I just really hope the stories of him being in light training are true and we are going to get him back, because just before his injury, he was rumoured to be going to Qatar. So I hope that isn't, still going to be about in January, because we're not, in our situation, going to be able to replace a striker as good as Grabban, especially in January. It's such a harder window. So the key for us to surviving and pushing on for the rest of the season, because as crazy as it is now, teams do go on runs, and we are still well within our capable of going on a good run and getting up that table. We need Grabban more than anyone in that team at the minute.
The worrying thing for me at the moment, you look at the teams above us, you look at Luton, they shouldn't be above us. They've got the lowest budget in the Championship and they're punching well above the weight. You've got Rotherham above us, you've got Coventry above us. The teams there shouldn't be better than us. They're there by right. They're not lucky. They're there. They deserve to be where they are. They're playing better than we are. They're creating more chances than we are. And we have got to do something quickly to turn it around, because that's what people look at. How can those teams be above us, with the amount of money that, has been spent on the squad, and there has been a lot of money spent on the squad. It's, it's crazy amounts. And, I've heard Forest fans now saying, well, things aren't right behind the scenes. That's a load of baloney for me, because they couldn't have done more behind the scenes for everybody. The fans, they talk about the new stand. I don't know when that's going to happen now because of, what's happened, obviously, with the pandemic. So all the, the stuff about, well, things aren't right behind the scenes. The owner couldn't have done more to get things right for the football club. The recruitment is one thing I think hasn't gone well, and that's got to improve. And it'll only improve if you give Chris Hughton the wherewithal to go and do it his way and bring his players in. Then people can judge what he does, who he brings in, and say, right, well, Chris brought these players in. They're not done very well, or crikey, look how well, they've done since, Chris brought these players in. He has to have carte blanche on who he brings in.
Greg, we'll come to you. I know you met with people from the club this week or last week with your Forza Garibaldi capacity. So we'll talk about that in a bit. There's an interesting question here. I mean, we talk about recruitment. And one absolutely fell piece of recruitment is Zach Clough. But he did score a couple of goals in a friendly in the week. And I think we're clutching at straws in a sense, but he is creative. Is there a case to be made for giving him a go in desperate times, do you think? Greg, I'll put that on to you, sorry.
I think with the way we are at the minute, I think if this, this splinter squad or bomb squad or whatever people are starting to call it is right, if we're paying them the money, give them the chance. They're not really going to do much worse on the training pitch than the current guys are they? And if Zach Clough is playing well and is fit in the under-23s, just get him training with the full squad. He might be desperate for that chance. And, he's clearly, hopefully, not done anything wrong behind the scenes to put him in there. He's just not in favour. So if we're going to pay him, get him training with us, get him playing. And I'd say that for some others as well. If we were doing a lot better, it wouldn't be as necessary. But we've got a big squad for a reason. Why not?
True. There's a point here that Greg Orb says that he's not in the 25-man squad, which I think is true, but I think you can change it in January, so he might have to wait. Yeah.
Well,
so
I thought he'd gone. When somebody said, Zach Clough's still at the club, I think it was Nigel Clough, because Mansfield played a game at the training ground the other day, I think. And
that's it,
yeah. And he said, "Oh, Zach," I said, "You're joking? I thought he'd gone." That's how long it is since he's been involved. I mean, I commentated on him when he was at Bolton, and he was their best player. He was creative, he was scoring goals, and when he came in, I thought, "Oh, what a decent buy, this lad's been." But then, like you say, Greg, he didn't get a chance. a regular chance, and then you suddenly fall into, number maybe 30 out of 35 in the squad, and where's your next game coming from? And you demoralise. There again, though, would his agent say go out and on loan, go somewhere and prove a point? I'd want to go and prove a point if I'm not in contention. So I don't know what the situation is there either.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps a more viable option is Brennan Johnson coming back in January. I saw another video of him in action for Lincoln last night, absolutely tearing it up in League One. Although I think this was in the Paint Pot Trophy thing, but he's playing very well. From a young player's point of view, Garry, would you bring him back, or is it better for him to stay at Lincoln and develop, and Forest gamble that they do stay up without him?
Well, if they do bring him back, then massive pressure comes on his shoulders, because the only reason to be brought back would be to bring him and put him in the team, I would think, not sit him on the bench, because no point in bringing him back if all he's going to do is sit on the bench. Do you give him a chance? I look at Gareth Southgate, with the England job. He's prepared to give young players a chance if they're playing well for their teams. I know it's the Premier League we're talking about, but players in form, you should give them a chance. Don't just leave them on loan. Younger players may be different a little bit, because, like I said, that pressure thing, if they do come back off loan and they're thrown into the deep end with a team that's not playing well, not scoring goals, that pressure becomes very intense. And if they don't do it, then, they're out again on in the background. Will they go backwards? You look at Ben Brereton, he was suddenly moved when he played. He was up front. Then he got moved to the right, didn't suit him, and he dropped off. His confidence went rock bottom. So that's how quickly things can turn around for you as a player. So you've got to be careful with the younger players. But if it continues like this and he does keep ripping it up there, then bring him back and say, right, okay, I'm going to give you an opportunity and let's see what you can do. You can't lose by it if you're not doing particularly well at the bottom of the league. Give it a go. You give him a chance and say, right. I was lucky. I was given a chance at that time. When Peter With was sold, and Steve Elliott, the lad, came in. He was terrific in the reserves, great goal scorer, but just didn't happen for him in the first 4 or 5 games. Then I got thrown in, and I was lucky that I'd got somebody who backed me, and he said, right, you're playing well in the reserves, right, you're in the first team, go and do it. And, you're lucky to get that opportunity. And I haven't got a problem with, no matter how old they are, if they're good enough, give them a chance, see what they can do.
What about you, Greg? I mean, I'd 100% recall him and play him straight away, but what do you do?
I'd love to. I'd recall him. But it's all this. Are we allowed to recall him? I don't know whether there's a clause.
I think we are. Yeah, I think we are.
Well, yeah, it's a no-brainer then. Get him back, even if we do buy other strikers, because if Graben's not fit and Taylor gets injured, where on earth do we go? We really have zero options there to get us out of this predicament we're in. I'd get him back. I'd get Carvalho back, and I know that's such a. There's so many different arguments about that, but I would. This is Chris Hughton's team now, not any other managers who made decisions before him. And he's obviously a proven manager. I think he's got the best record in the Championship throughout the years he's been a manager. But it's a long-term project for him. With Brighton, I think they went 12 hours without scoring a goal. We only did 6 hours. But the problem with our football club, as we've always known, is we don't give managers the chance and the time that teams like Brighton would have done, and they reap the rewards 2 seasons later. I don't believe if we are not in the top half this season, then who's saying they won't change it again and we're back in square one and a new manager comes in, players are on loan who we'd rather be playing. So we've just got to let this guy, this proven very good manager, stick with us, even if it doesn't go to plan this year.
I mean, the overall problem is we just don't look like scoring at the moment. Full stop. That's the thing. Even set pieces, we don't look like we're going to score from a set piece, and we look like we can always give one away early in a game, or we can make a mistake early in a game. And every time we do make a mistake at the moment, teams are capitalising and punishing us for it. And, it's all right saying, well, we're unlucky this, we're unlucky that. You make your own luck sometimes. You have to. And stop blaming, bad luck. But I was lucky never to play in a team that was struggling at the bottom of the table. I was always, when I was at Grimsby, when I was at Notts County, Man United was the biggest struggle I had, to get in the top 6, and I couldn't score and I got a bad injury and all that sort of stuff. So, I don't know what it's like to be down at the bottom of the league. It must be absolutely awful, but you've got to stand up, as a player, as an individual. And, I'm surprised Michael Dawson's not been involved in anything under Lamouche, he's left out. And at that particular point, Michael Dawson was needed in that team at the back end of the season because we're conceding goals from things coming in the box. We didn't have a leader out there. Had he been in that team for 3 or 4 games or come on 10, 15 minutes from the end of a game, we would have been in the playoffs, guaranteed. But nobody used him. Nobody utilised his experience. And I think that was one of the biggest downfalls of not getting the playoffs, not utilising somebody like Michael. Because, you need a leader out there. We don't seem to have that. McKenna, I've been impressed with McKenna. I think his partnership with Worrell could be particularly good. But it's not there that we're struggling. We're struggling there as well because nothing's happening at the other end. You can play as well as you like as defenders, but if goals aren't going in, you're under pressure then as a midfield player and as a defender because, you're not scoring goals. So every time you're not scoring, the pressure comes on you as a back 4, as a back 3 or whatever. And that's what's happening. I mean, the goal we conceded, when Samba didn't come out, he just waited for the ball to come into his hands. And then I have to disagree with my old teammate Viv Anderson a little bit. He said on Sky that it's instinctive. He would have done the same thing with a handball. No, he wouldn't. You don't do that. If it's 75 minutes or 80 minutes, maybe. You're 14 minutes into a game. It's 0-0. You don't go and handball it there. You go 1-0 down. You've still got 11 men for, nearly an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes or whatever. Don't do things like that. Go 1-0 down. Don't get yourself sent off. Then you're putting pressure again on your teammates. So, no, I don't think, it's instinctive. I never saw anybody do that. In our team when we played, you just don't do those things. So... Viv, I'm sorry, I disagree with you on that particular point. Not many things I do disagree with him on, but that is one. And then, you're putting your teammates under pressure. They played very well as well with 10 men. They were tremendous. To only get beat as they did, was pretty impressive. But it's the other end. That is always going to come to the fore. Scoring goals. That's why strikers get paid more than anybody else. The hardest job in the business. And that's where we are struggling massively because Taylor's not getting... this is not having a go at Taylor at all. I wouldn't have a go because he's getting nothing to feed on. And there's no midfield players scoring. Nobody is scoring goals. So you can't blame the striker who's playing up front and trying everything he possibly can to make something happen.
Garry talked about service there, Greg, and he mentioned set pieces, and he's spot on. The set pieces were utterly dire until Knockaert came on, and Knockaert did make a difference, which leads to the question of Knockaert's future, because they can sign him in January, but it'll be permanent, and he's not going to be cheap, and I think it'd be madness to sign him. So maybe they extend the loan, I don't know, or maybe they send him back. I mean, where do you stand on Knockaert, Greg, and what they should do with him?
Garry mentioned set pieces. That one yesterday when we're 18 yards out on the left-hand side, play it across the goal for Norwich to go on a very dangerous counter. You think, oh my God, and Knockaert comes on. The set pieces, the balls he puts in are superb. But in all honesty, he's a Premier League player. He's a brilliant player. Personally, he's going to cost too much money. I don't think we're currently in the position to spend that type of money on a player to get you in the Premier League rather than a couple of players to get you out the mess we're in. I'd love to see him signed in January, but I don't believe that we will.
No, I mean, I'd extend his loan, but I would not buy him because you've got a very real risk of getting relegated, and then you've got a bloke on, I don't know what he's on, a very high wage in League One.
I think I read it was 60,000 at Fulham, and they paid 10 million for him in the summer. Yeah, and they've already got him out on loan, so they're going to want, even if they want half that back, it's a hell of a lot of money for a team fighting financial fair play every single year that we're in this league.
Yeah, true. What would you do in January, Garry? I mean, if you're Chris Hughton, how would you?
Concerning him.
Well, in general, actually, I suppose, good knockout and in general of how you go about signings in January.
I think watching him as well, you feel a little bit sorry for him as well, because he's got Premier League mentality playing in the Championship, and he can see his team are struggling. And I think sometimes he tries a little bit too hard and a little too much, and maybe he does one trick too many and, gets dispossessed. But again, I don't hold that against him, because he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to make something happen. But sometimes maybe an extra touch is not needed. Play it earlier, get it in the box earlier, whatever. But I can understand why he does that sometimes, because nothing's happening. He's trying to make something happen. But I just think Chris is not daft. I mean, his record in the Championship is tremendous, and he'll know what's wrong and he'll know what's needed in that team. Clearly, it's the midfield, central midfield. It needs to be, two, not just one player. We need two creative players in there, because one creative player, easy to mark. When you've got options, that when we always go back, I'm not saying about our team, because the success we had was just outstanding at that particular point. We had Robertson and O'Neill. We could switch flanks, and both of them caused trouble for oppositions. And that was the beauty of having those two players. You weren't predictable. I think we're very predictable at the moment. Teams, find it comfortable to defend against us because there's only one up front. I sometimes say to my son, I think I could have played, centre half in that game against, Forest at times, because it's comfortable for centre halves at the moment against us to defend. And I always go back. I said on the podcast last time, I mentioned Liverpool, the pressure they put on teams in their half, in the opposition's half. They pin them in. They don't let them, they don't let them out. They force mistakes, and the number of goals they score because of that, the work rate there. And I don't think we do that enough in the opponent's half. And if you do that and put teams under pressure, then mistakes come. But I don't think we've got enough pressure on oppositions at the moment to force mistakes and to make things happen in that final third.
I mean, they don't press the ball at all, do they, Forest? I don't think they press the ball. They sit back. I mean, that's a way of playing. That's fair enough. But Norwich pressed Forest, and I thought they coped well second half. Actually, Forest, they passed it much better. But first half, they couldn't. They couldn't string two passes together, could they? So you're right about that.
You made a very good point earlier on that I meant to address about pedestrian way we play it. It is slow. It's laborious, and we used to play. In training, we used to play 3-touch, 2-touch, 1-touch. You start with 3 touches, and you don't need 3 touches. Then you go to 2, and then 1 touch, and that just helps you so much when you go out on a pitch on a Saturday. The 3 touches, you'll get closed down, you'll get dispossessed. You go to 2 touches, and you'll cause problems. And if you can mix that with 1 touch in the final third, you'll cause even more problems. But we have too many touches on the ball. We don't get the ball in the box early enough when we've got the opportunity. We take 1 touch or 2 touches too many. And that we look, I think we look scruffy in the build-up sometimes, and you look at teams that, I always go back, look at the teams who got into the Premier League, and you look how Leeds are doing. You look at West Brom, they're struggling a little bit, but they got there by having the players in the right areas, the creative positions to cause problems. They moved it quicker, and they look more athletic than we do. But, half the time the problem is because we've only got one up front to try and find. It's difficult when you've only got that one outlet, for a player who's got the ball at his feet. You can get it wide. Yeah, you'll see Christie going forward. But then it seems to break down. It's so difficult to watch at the moment. I feel sorry a little bit for Chris because, he's got that many options, that many players to see and try and, get his best 11 in his mind. And it's got to be so difficult. I don't envy him at all, but, he's done it before. He's a calming influence. And he just hoped that he gets the right players in January and that we're not really, really in trouble going in the back end of January. In December, not too bad. Well, it's bad for Forest, but, we're not in the bottom 3. We're just above it. 2 wins takes you, a little bit safer. And then you've got January to come. So, yes, we've had difficult games, but so have other people. I think Luton beat Norwich, did they, last week? Was it a couple of weeks ago, 3-1, did they? So teams like that, are finding a way to beat the fancied teams. Last season, we did well against the fancied teams. Maybe not so much, this time. We got Brentford at the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, which is not going to be easy again. That run of games before it started was going to be difficult. It's even more difficult now because we can't get near a win. We can't buy a win at the moment. And, the longer that goes on, the confidence is going to go even further down the pan. And, it's difficult for Chris to raise everybody.
Will they stay up?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
I don't see why not. You look at the basis of the squad, there's the core, I think the spine's not bad. The goalkeeper is one of the best. He's made a couple of blunders, but he doesn't make many. I think McKenna and Worrell, if you get those two fit, that's, a pairing that's as good as anything, I think, maybe in the Championship. Then you've got up front, okay, but the one glaring problem we have is that central midfield area. When you play Colback, I've seen the Forest fans say Colback and Yates in the same team. It's a little bit negative, and you've got to agree with the Forest fans on that. It is negative. You need some influence in there. You need somebody who can do things when they're in possession of the ball and make something happen. And that's the one glaring area. Clough always said, build the spine right. Goalkeeper, centre-half, centre midfield, striker. And I think we've got three of those elements right. But the one element that we're sadly missing at the moment is creativity.
Will they stay up, Greg? I should ask you as a fan as well.
I think the most important thing that can happen now this season is December 16th, the Tier 2 comes in for Nottingham, because it's such an unlevel playing field for me that we have to go to places like Watford and Norwich, and they've got 2,000 fans, and 2,000 fans in an empty stadium, they can make a lot of noise and get on referees' backs. And I go back to the Watford game when that player clear red second yellow card at least 3 times, and the advantage was played, and it's like the referee forgot about it. If there was those fans in the ground, they'd have got on his back, and they can change referees' minds. I love the fact that there's fans in the grounds, and I won't want to take that away from any club, but it is unfair that they can have it and we can't.
Are we clutching at
straws?
No,
not at all. No. When we scored yesterday, you could have heard a pin drop. Then all of a sudden, Norwich kick off, you hear a roar from the crowd. You could see they'd got that extra step then. And I think it's so important that we get some level of atmosphere back in that ground.
Let's put this in perspective a little bit. Teams at the top, they're going to be in Tier 3. They're not going to have fans in. You look at Leicester just down the road. They've got no fans in. Look how well they're doing in the Premier League. It's all about mentality when you go out there. Some players adapt to it more. Maybe they can get used to it a little bit more without fans, and other players need that noise to feed off. And it can be difficult, without a doubt. When you're playing for the reserves, you used to play for the reserves. You used to play on the first team pitch. You used to play at the City Ground, and you used to get fans in there, but it echoed around the ground. About 1,000 people in there. So I think some players adapt better to it than others. You look at the golf at the moment. That's why I think a lot of professional golfers are doing better in the big tournaments because there are no crowds there. Dustin Johnson won the Masters, but other players, came through. Morikawa, came through and won one of the big majors. And I think it suits other, in every sport, it suits other people maybe differently. Cricket's a better, thing to look at as well. Didn't seem to affect cricket at all. Football, I think, is the big loser in this because the nature of the crowds, the build up to everything, coming to the ground, the whole thing the fans bring. And now fans are being, lauded as being missed. And perhaps we took them for granted a little bit before, football fans. And it just shows how important they are to every football club. And the sooner we get them back in the stadium, the better. But while they're not in there, you can't make that an excuse because other teams are going about the business and they're doing well under the same circumstances.
Since we're talking about fans, then obviously, Greg, you're co-founder of Forza Garibaldi. you and who was the person you went with? Matt
or Droid.
Yes, sorry.
Matt,
You had the opportunity to meet with senior figures from Forest recently and put across some of the concerns that fans have expressed about kind of the flow of communication out of the club. I mean, what can you tell people about that meeting?
First off, it was unplanned. We did genuinely need to get into the ground to sort out potential displays for when we get back. We're hoping to get back on the 26th. Well, not so much us, but 2,000 fans. And we'd love to be able to do something. So, the club approached us and said, we need to talk about getting fans back in. And we just thought it was a normal meeting. But when we got there, it was with the CEO, Yanis, who's been, he's getting a lot of stick online at the minute. The chairman, Nick Randall, Johnny Owen, and ourselves. So we didn't have time to plan. We didn't have time to think up a lot of questions. But to their credit, we spent 2.5 hours in a room with them and asked them pretty much anything we could think of at the time. They answered a lot of our questions. They couldn't answer some. To be honest, it gave me a bit more hope than when I had when I went in there, because it's clear they are planning on being here for the long term. It's hard because we've got a lot of stick the last few days online for not coming out and saying exactly what was said, but we want to give the club the opportunity, and we said this to them, that they don't need to just speak to certain groups, whether it be Forza or the Trust. They need to come out and address the fans like they had done back in 2017. The chairman's very good at that, very good at speaking. And I think it's about time, and it's only fair that these fans that have sat at home for the past, 9 months get to hear what some of the good things that are going on within the club. They admit they've made some mistakes. We spoke about things like, we asked the question about Ben Watson not being acknowledged. And they admit when he left, and they admit things like that were mistakes. The original season card, debacle, you could say. We spoke about that at quite some length, and they do see mistakes have been made, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, but I do hope now that they're willing to have a look and have a few discussions with fans, because there's positive things coming out of the club. They spoke about certain things that they've been doing, and Yanis, the CEO, spoke for 2 or 3 minutes really passionately about what they've been doing within the club. And afterwards, all I said to him was, that's what fans want to hear. Like, why aren't we hearing things like that? Give us a bit of hope, especially why the only way we get to vent at the minute is online. We're not going down the pub after the game, and we're not speaking to our own friends in the ground. We're quite distant from everything that's going on. And whilst this silence, things are going to bubble behind the scenes from the fans. So I'm hopeful over the next month or so, there will be a few good developments from within the club, and we'll all get to hear about them.
From a former player's point of view, Garry, I mean, they've been pretty welcoming to you, haven't they? The current ownership.
Yeah, they certainly have, but it doesn't matter about us, ex-players. It's not about us. It's fantastic, yeah, because in the past, we've sort of been punished for what we've achieved, by previous managers, and you wondered why, because we never sort of went after the glory of it. We won the things we did. That's how we addressed things. We just got on with it. Yeah, we won it. We never said, oh, look at us. We did this, we did that. And for the club to come in and be as welcoming, to the ex-players as they are, has been fantastic. But I think behind the scenes, it's looking a lot better. Since Marinakis came in, he's put everything right off the pitch. You hear when things were going well, the fans, 30,000 people in there all the time, they couldn't speak highly enough of what was going on. And all of a sudden, because the pandemic's come along, we're having a bad time, playing wise. We threw it away last season, not getting into playoffs. All of a sudden, the blame game changes a little bit. Excuse me. And I think that's wrong, because they couldn't have done more. I think at the moment, I went round with them to the backroom staff to schools to talk about the dream big, and they're trying to do all those sort of things with school children at a young age saying, you can do these things. I mean, I came from a council estate and, was able to come and play professional football. And I wasn't supposed to be able to do that because of where I came from. I used to be a floor layer and, they're trying to do that and make, whether it's you play football or you want to be a vet, you go to the schools and it's about whatever you want to do, think big. And these sort of campaigns, not a lot of people sometimes see these things that are doing behind the scenes. And I think it's fantastic. And, when I think when the pandemic started, all the food they went, took was at the ground and took them to homeless people and things like that. They're doing all things like that behind the scenes. And I think it's fantastic. I've seen it at first hand. So, there's a lot to be positive about, but it all gets overshadowed when you're playing badly, when your team's playing badly, because if you're playing badly and you're in trouble, then obviously all the negativity comes out and all you see is what's going on the pitch, which is understandable, quite right, but let's get it right. There is a lot going on behind the scenes that is very, very good. They've got a lot of good people there. I mean, my grandson, in the summer, he goes to near the training ground. They do things for the kids there. I went to watch a couple of times there and pick him up. And, these sort of things, they're trying everything they possibly can to do the right things. And, they're, like I said, the stand they're going to build, hopefully. Nobody saw all that coming and it gave everybody a hope. And then the pandemic comes in and sort of dashes it. And, last season, not getting the playoffs was, devastating for a lot of fans. But we've got a chance now, the vaccine and everything, hopefully. It's not going to be an overnight thing. We've still got to do the right things. I mean, I don't even walk out without a mask at the moment. Even in the fresh air, I've got a mask on all the time. You've got to do these things because the rate will go up again if we don't. And we all want to get back to normal football-wise as quickly as possible. You mentioned, Greg, how important it is for clubs to have 2,000 people in. It can lift you. And, don't all of a sudden, because we're not playing well, start the blame game of saying, well, it's not right behind the scenes. Yes, they've got things wrong. Everybody gets things wrong. The government gets things wrong with the pandemic. Admit it when you do, you are getting things wrong. That's what people appreciate. When you say, yeah, we didn't quite handle that as well as we should do. And, I think Forest, by coming out and saying those things to you, Greg, it's particularly good. Because you see all the time, with this pandemic, so many people won't admit that when things have gone wrong. Admit they've gone wrong. Admit you've got things wrong, and people appreciate that more. Your frankness. You're open about it. You don't say, "Oh no, well we got this right, we got that right." Admit it when you're wrong. It's not, a negative. Be upfront, and I think Forest have done that. And it's, the owner's got a lot of credit to take from that. He's put his money where his mouth is. It's just on the pitch at the moment. We've got to get it right. And hopefully Chris will get it right. And January is the key area for us now.
So as fans, Greg, who is it you want to hear from? Is it the owner? Is it the CEO? Does it really matter? And what kind of things are you looking to hear? Is it like an explanation of the transfer policy or more just general openness about the good things that are going on? I mean, what would you like the club to be doing?
I think for starters, give us some hope on the ground developments. That was such a positive thing at the start of this year, and people were getting really excited about where that's going. That's obviously gone silent for whatever reason, but I'm really hopeful now that in the new year things will develop with that. Again, the mistakes were made in the season tickets. That's done now, and they rectified that, and they rectified it quickly. It didn't take them long to realise, this isn't as good as it could be. And now the ones of us that have taken up option one are hopefully going to be in the ground within the new year. And, that's a fantastic achievement if it happens. So just things like back in 2017, they spoke about a fan advisory board, getting all the fans involved. I personally wouldn't want to be on that, but getting the fans that don't really hear as much as sometimes we're lucky to hear involved within the club. And they had all these great ideas at the start. And it seems for me, the craziness of this year and everything, it has been pushed to the side and starting to rejuvenate a couple of these things that were starting to look good. Just fans need hope. Football's the most important of unimportant things, and when it's not going right on the pitch, we need to know that things are going right off the pitch, and we're not hearing that at the minute.
Right. I think we'll almost leave it there. I'd like to give Garry a little slot for any other business, and I could see he was itching to say something. So is there anything else you want to say before we finish, Garry?
No, I think you've got to level things up, with the pandemic. Nobody has been through this before. So none of us know what to do in certain situations because we've never had to do it before. We've all had to learn lessons. We've all had to be, forego things. It's something that in any walk of life, no matter what you do as an individual, as a government or whatever, mistakes are going to be made because you've never seen it before. And it's going to be the same at football clubs. We're very lucky to have a very wealthy owner. A lot of clubs haven't got that. And, with that size of that squad, he's maintaining that at the moment, putting money in on a weekly basis. And you figure out how much he's putting in on a weekly basis. It's staggering. So, don't give the blame game to the owner, because without him, who knows what could have happened? And who knows, with the pandemic, none of us know because we've not been there. It's crazy what it's done to people's lives, mental health and all that, so there's no blame game there, because can you do a better job? Can anybody do a better job? Can anybody do a better job as all the different countries we've seen, treating the pandemic different? They said it was going okay in certain countries. All of a sudden, those countries it was going all right in are seeing massive cases. And so, it's easy to blame people. It's easy to criticize. But, let's all just hope now with the vaccine that we can all, get to normality. It's not going to be normal, obviously, but it's a start. And fans are back in certain grounds. Let's hope, our tier changes. We can do that. We can see the difference it makes. And, go into 2021 with a whole better outlook and big smiles on our faces.
Greg, I shall give you the last word if there's anything else you want to say about your meeting or if we've missed anything.
It's great listening to Garry then. There's so many passionate people around this club, isn't there? And, it is such a special place and we forget that. The thing I read the other week was that the owner's putting in something like £2 million a month throughout the pandemic. If that's true, God, we are quite brave to, start talking about what's been going off when we don't really know the full story. But this winter now, we're starting to see a lot more hope regarding the pandemic and fans. And let's hope that on the pitch, things start improving like they seem to be within the news and stuff.
Yeah, can we just say as well, we're giving people in other parts of the world stick for what they were doing during the pandemic. Nottingham's getting a really bad reputation again. And you can see why. The pictures we're seeing, you think, well, are you daft? Just, take advice. Sorry, I need a drink of water now. We're at the end of the show. But, it depresses you when you see that as well, because Nottingham's a great place to be. It's a fantastic city. And we're getting a reputation, for flouting the rules and things like that. Just don't flout the rules. Let's do what we have to get everything back to normal. It's a fantastic city, 2 great universities, 2 football clubs, a fantastic cricket ground. When Mourinho came up, when he did the forward for the Johnny Owen's book, I Believe in Miracles, and he came up incognito on the train from London to have a look at the city of Nottingham, how the football club won 2 European Cups. And he couldn't believe the size of the place, and how we achieved what we did. And that tells you what a great city Nottingham is. We had a great cricket team. We have test matches here. We've got a fabulous city to be proud of. Let's all do what we have to do to get us through this bloody awful time and come out next year when things get a bit better. We can all get together again. We can have a drink. We can have a smile. We can watch football. And we can all stop whinging about tiredness and things like that and just, get on with our lives. But you have to do the right thing first. Wear a mask. So your glasses steam up. I take my glasses off. Don't worry about that, things like that. Do as you're told.
Don't think we can add to that.
Rant over.
Rant over. My glass is steam up as well. So yes, you're right, Garry. Right, I can't top that. So I'll probably just end it there and say thanks very much to Garry and Greg, and thanks to everyone who watched along. We shall be back next week with I don't know what, I haven't planned anything yet, but we'll be back next week with hopefully a good episode and reflecting finally on a Forest win. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that and let some steam off. You certainly both seem to.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
We shall see you all soon. Thanks very much, everyone.
Cheers, Matt.